I started playing Counter-Strike 2 September 27, 2023 exclusively on the Faceit platform. Shortly after my first few matches, I dropped to 900 elo, which is where I'd like to say I began my journey. Fast forward 7 months later, I found myself at 2008 elo and competing at Faceit level 10, Faceit's highest rank outside of top 1000 challengers. During this time, I maintained a healthy marriage with my wife, worked a full-time job, took care of my family, and finished my college degree. What I'd like to do with this video is share my journey and the things I've learned along the way so I can help speed up your improvement.
Dude, this guy is insane. He just one-taps me, cat, every time.
During my journey, I discovered a multitude of different areas that are key to improve on in order to become a better Counter-Strike player. I've categorized these things as the 3 pillars of improvement. These 3 pillars are mechanics, utility usage, and game sense. The first 3 things I want to talk about in regards to mechanic is aiming. First, raw aim. Everyone understands to compete in Counter-Strike you need good aim. However, being good at aiming has multiple layers which you may not be practicing properly. There is your ability to stand still and aim, or raw aim, which almost everyone can do with a reasonable amount of practice. Tools to help you advance your ability to raw aim can be either standing still in aimbots and shooting bots, or using third-party programs like Aim Labs. It's important to note that having incredible raw aiming ability will not result in improvement if this is the only skill you practice. However, having good raw aim is essential. Crosshair placement is something I'm sure you've heard of and understand its importance. However, when I began my journey, I acknowledged this importance and then neglected to practice it. During one of my several periods of plateauing, I discovered simply leveraging pre-fire maps to help improve my crosshair placement resulted in me finding easier kills, entering sites more effectively, and ultimately increased my elo by a few hundred. To this day, I practice pre-fire maps and review my demos to analyze my crosshair placement. No matter how good you think you are at this skill, there is always room for improvement. Good pre-fire maps can be found on prac.com or Refrag. A link to both of those will be in the description below. Spray control. This is the last thing I want to mention before moving on to different aspects of mechanics. Counter-Strike is a chaotic game, and because of this, things don't always pan out the way we envision. We will miss our first shot on the enemy countless times, whether it be because of bad aim or weapon inaccuracy. This will lead us into spraying our weapon more times than not. Feeling comfortable spraying your weapon and controlling it accurately will result in countless kills and overall make you a deadlier player. There is a workshop map to help improve this ability, which you should use to learn patterns and master them. It's important to note though, when you spray your rifle, more times than not the enemy will be moving. So I recommend using aimbots as well and turning on bot movement to help control your spray on moving targets once you feel comfortable with the spray. There are countless subcategories for movement, but for players who wish to leverage this skill to improve, the most important thing to practice is counter-strafing. This is closely tied into aiming, but because it's relative to you moving your player model, I've decided to put it under movement. In Counter-Strike, you are not accurate when moving. I expect most of you to understand this, however, I challenge you to review your demos and see how often you properly counter-strafe. I promise, unless you're playing higher than 2400 elo on Faceit, there are going to be countless times where you fail to stop when moving and begin to shoot. This skill can be improved in tandem with crosshair placement on pre-fire maps, which I mentioned earlier. If you master this fundamental, you will see incredible leaps in your skill rating. Skill jumps. On every map there are locations where you can practice skill jumps to speed up your rotations or put yourself in optimal positions to pick a fight with the enemy. Start learning skill jumps on your favorite map and practice them in offline mode. Austin CS made a video a few months ago explaining how he improved and what he does in order to maintain his skills in practice. In this video he explained that he DM'd for 1 hour during his practice sessions. He does note though that starting off with doing DMs for an hour a day can potentially be physically harmful if you're not used to that level of intensity for an extended period of time. I took this video to heart, and several months ago I decided that I was going to DM for at least 1 hour a day every day to improve. No, I do not recommend DMing on Valve servers in the game client. Based on your region, there are different platforms that you can find populated DM servers. If you're an NA like myself, prac.com is an excellent place to get your hour in. If you're from EU, I recommend looking at xplay.gg. Immediately following this training schedule, I saw massive improvements. I went from 1500 elo on Faceit to 1800 in under 2 weeks. I continue to DM every day for at least 1 hour. What I've discovered though is DMing for an hour straight can be mentally taxing, so breaking this up into 3 blocks of 20 minutes and taking a break in between is very beneficial, especially if you struggle to maintain a high level of intensity. Again, I cannot stress enough just how important DMing is. I know it can be rage-inducing, boring, and overall something that just doesn't sound like fun, but if you can buckle down and get your hour in every day, I promise you will see improvements in your game. Learning lineups for utility is an excellent way to start improving. There is an abundance of YouTube content on CS2 utility usage. One of my absolute favorite content creators is CS Tactics. He has countless videos on every map showcasing creative ways to use your utility to create advantage for yourself and your team. Austin CS also has several shorts showcasing utility sets that can do the same. Dedicate some time in learning these lineups, go into an offline match, practice these lineups, and then implement them in your gameplay. Failing to do all three of these things, from my experience, resulted in me forgetting the lineups altogether. So be sure to learn the lineups, practice the lineups, and then apply them. Hold on. If you're enjoying the video, consider leaving a like. It really helps out the channel. Alright, back to the video. During my journey, I discovered just how difficult it is to effectively use flashbangs. I also learned once you develop any level of proficiency with them, how incredible they actually can be. Learning flash lineups is good and can be an effective way to support your teammates, but if you're mostly solo queue like how I am, learning how to pop flash for yourself can net you several kills per game. Wilson CS2 has an excellent video covering this and helped me improve my flashbang usage. I strongly encourage you check that video out. Link to description. While I was learning how to play CS2, I used a site called Leadify to track my progress and gave me advanced analytics of my gameplay. One of the tabs that they have is a tracker on utility. What I noticed for myself was I was exceeding the standard in a metric that they called unused utility on death. This number during the early stages of my journey was incredibly low. I thought this was a good thing until I started to realize that I was just dumping my utility immediately every round and in turn not using hardly any of it effectively. Being able to identify which situations to use your utility and when you shouldn't is key to effectively leveraging this equipment to become a better player. A few examples of this would be holding onto a smoke to defuse a bomb, or using that smoke to retake a site. The same thing goes for flashbangs. You can also hold on to HE grenades unless you have a lineup or you absolutely know where the enemy is where you're about to lob the nade. As a T, it's also beneficial to hold onto your smoke until your team wants to execute a site. There are countless ways to use your utility, and a good place to start to learn is to watch high elo streamers and see how they're using their grenades. Something I want to mention before we move on is Lurk Smokes. These are smokes that allow you to pass by the enemy or catch the enemy off guard, resulting in easy kills. These smokes are very useful, especially in lower elos or in solo queue. After I started implementing Lurk Smokes in my gameplay, I noticed just how effective they are and just how often enemies disrespect them. Similar to learning traditional lineups on YouTube, you can find countless Lurk Smokes for every map. It's important to play around with these smokes and find out what works best for you. Developing game sense is one of those weird skills that is difficult to measure outside of decision making and enemy prediction. The best way to develop this skill is to continue to play the game. If you're relatively new to the game, there isn't one thing I can tell you to instantly improve this skill. This is all developed over time. Outside of playing the game, a great way to develop game sense is to watch your demos. If you have never watched your demos before, I strongly encourage you to start. A great place to start when you do watch your replays is to begin with your deaths. Always ask yourself why you died. Was it a mechanical issue? Did the enemy catch you off guard? Why were they able to catch you off guard? Was my position good? Start to ask yourself this when you get into review, and I promise you, you will see results. Once you start watching more of your demos, start looking at the decisions in game. Examine your crosshair placement. Study your movement. Identify patterns with the enemy. Break down key rounds. And finally, set specific goals based on your discoveries. I was blown away with just how fast I improved once I started reviewing my gameplay. I discovered just how many subconscious mistakes I was making. If I started watching my demos sooner, I would have made it to level 10 much faster. Map awareness. Understanding what is happening in the map, whether your teammates are communicating with you or not, is important for maintaining good positioning. A lot of problems with map awareness can be solved with effective settings to help maintain complete visual of the map. Here are my settings. This is all your preference, but the most important thing to keep in mind is that you should always be able to see the entire map while you're playing. Playstyle. There are countless styles of playing Counter-Strike. Some players find great success in almost exclusively being aggressive, while other players find equal amounts of success in maintaining a passive playstyle. I myself discovered that for me, maintaining a healthy mix between these two is best for me. As a CT, I will sometimes test the limits of what the enemy will let me get away with, like pushing through main on the respective site that I am holding. When plays like that work out for me, it helps to remind the enemy that I am capable of being aggressive, which requires them to put a crosshair on my potential push. Mixing that with being passive and always changing angles you are holding is very important for keeping the enemy guessing. That's it for my 3 pillars of improvement, but there are a few more things I'd like to add that aren't directly related to gameplay. First of which is consistency. You can practice all the things I mentioned before as hard as you possibly can today, but honestly, that won't really matter. You'll see minor improvements today, maybe, but honestly what counts is continuing to practice these things over a long period of time and remaining dedicated. If getting better at Counter-Strike is something you take seriously, then you need to hold yourself accountable to your routine and be sure to practice consistently. Personally, my routine consisted of killing 1,000 bots a day, deathmatching on Prac for an hour, and then playing Face-It games, followed by a demo review. Like I said at the start of the video, outside of Counter-Strike, I work full-time, maintain a marriage, and since I began my journey in September last year, I've completed my college degree. Some days I wasn't able to play Face-It matches, but I was always able to get my bot kills and deathmatch for at least 1 hour. Now with all that said, please focus on your mental health and do not neglect personal and professional responsibilities. I found during periods where I improved the most, it was when all the things in my life were accounted for and my mental health was good. At the end of the day, Counter-Strike is a game, and it should be enjoyed. So if that passion to get better dies or the game becomes unfun, then perhaps it's time to move on, or at the very least, take a break. Thank you for watching my no BS guide on improving at Counter-Strike. For those of you that stuck around and watched the entire video, I want you to know I really do appreciate it. If you want YouTube to put this video in front of more people, give the video a like. And if you want to share what you've done to improve at CS, please add it to the comments. Lastly, if you want to stay up to date with my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks again.